Episode 11, Collapsing Was Inevitable, You Bastards, 1. But, Unjiam lowered his head, glancing at the kid walking beside him. This one's got some spice, he thought. Most people dropped into a new environment act like they've been tossed into a horror movie, wide-eyed, sweaty, hoping not to be the first one eaten. But this kid? Nah, he looked like he was ready to flip the script and scare everyone else. The kid's fast pace screamed annoyance, not fear. Unjiam raised an eyebrow. Wasn't this kid supposed to be new? Maybe someone forgot to mention that to him. When did that place called the White Plum Blossom Boarding House come into existence? The kid asked out of nowhere. What are you curious about? I thought disciples were supposed to live with their masters, learning from them directly. So what's with the group sleepover? Well, wasn't this kid just poking the sore spots? Traditionally, the kid was spot on. Mount Hua's disciples should have been learning directly from masters, creating this dignified legacy of martial arts. But that went out the window when Mount Hua started circling the drain. We just thought it would be more efficient. Unjiam answered, shrugging off the question like it was no big deal. Does teacher stay there too? No. Chung Myung just nodded like he heard the answer he expected. But it was more like he couldn't care less. Unjiam eyed him. This kid is weird. Either he gets it or he's just bored. Maybe both? Truth be told, the dorms were a sign of Mount Hua's downfall. They didn't have enough masters to teach all the newbies, so they lumped everyone together, and now Unjiam was left babysitting. He'd seen plenty of strange kids come and go, but this one took the cake. Meanwhile, Chung Myung's thoughts were running a different track entirely. They ran away. The once great Mount Hua was now a joke. The disciples who should have stayed to keep the legacy alive? Gone. Masters bailed. Students were left twisting in the wind. This place is like a sinking ship where everyone grabbed the nearest lifeboat and said, "Good luck" to those left behind. Chung Myung clicked his tongue. The old Mount Hua was gone, replaced by this. Situation. A part of him wanted to rip into them for messing up the legacy, but another part of him knew survival mattered more than tradition right now. But damn, those poor kids who had to live through this mess. He sighed, glancing around as they reached the training ground, which looked more like a ghost town than a martial arts school. Huh? Chung Myung tilted his head. There were way fewer disciples than he remembered. Back in the day, you couldn't take 2 steps without tripping over a dozen of them. Sword! Ta! 100 swords stabbed forward in unison. Oh, this is new. Chung Myung blinked. Mount Hua had always been about freedom, a little rough around the edges but full of spirit. But here, they look like an army of wooden puppets. Isn't it nice? Unjiam asked with a proud smile. Yes, Chung Myung muttered. But what he was really thinking was, what the hell are they doing? As the kids drilled the sword techniques, Chung Myung's eyes narrowed. The more they trained, the more ridiculous it seemed. This wasn't Mount Hua's way. This was something else. That... Huh? What kind of sword technique is that? Unjiam seemed surprised by the question, but answered anyway. This is the equilibrium sword. The what now? It's the foundation of Mount Hua's swordsmanship. Everyone starts here. Chung Myung's mind was doing backflips. Equilibrium sword? Foundation? Who are they kidding? But Unjiam kept talking, oblivious to the growing storm inside Chung Myung's head. It's a difficult technique, but with effort, you'll master it. For now, go to the back and observe. Chung Myung trudged to the back, his mind whirling. Unjiam thought the kid was nervous. Typical first-day jitters, right? But oh no, Chung Myung wasn't nervous. He was pissed. What the hell are these people doing? Teaching kids advanced sword techniques right off the bat? It was like handing a kindergartner a calculus book and saying, good luck. They'd memorize stuff, sure, but they wouldn't understand a damn thing. Chung Myung clicked his tongue. This place was in knee-deep trouble, and the kids didn't even know it. Suddenly, one of the older disciples looked at him. You? Yeah? Why aren't you training? Because I don't know what the hell I'm doing, Chung Myung answered, deadpan. The disciple blinked, then went back to barking orders at the other kids. Chung Myung sighed, staring up at the clear blue sky. Mount Hua's future is as empty as this damn sky. Just as he was losing himself in thought, a voice interrupted. Hey! Huh? You're new, right? Oh, great. A welcoming committee. Just what he needed. I'll see you later, the kid said, his voice dripping with attitude. Don't run off. Chung Myung sighed again. Fine, but answer me this. What? What are they teaching you after this? What's next? After this, the Seven Sages sword, then the lesser Qing sword technique. Qing sword? Yeah, then we get to learn the Tai Flummox sword. At that, Chung Myung's face twisted like he'd bitten into something sour. Tai Flummox sword? That was one of the weakest techniques Mount Hua had ever seen. One more question, he asked, his voice getting sharper. What now? What happened to the 24-movement plum blossom sword technique? The kid blinked. The what? The 24-movement plum blossom sword technique? Episode 11. Collapsing was inevitable. You bastards. 1. Continued. Chung Myung stood there, his mind racing. How could they not know about the 24-movement plum blossom sword technique? The very thing that made Mount Hua famous? Had things really gone that far downhill? The kid continued. I've never heard of that technique. It's not part of our training. Ugh, Chung Myung groaned. This was bad. Like, real bad. If the current disciples didn't even know about one of the most critical techniques in Mount Hua's history, then what were they learning? Equilibrium of 6 sword, Qing sword, Tai Flummox sword. All this junk, he muttered to himself. His mind flashed back to a conversation he'd had in the past, one that felt like it happened a lifetime ago. Leader, this Tai Flummox sword is too weak in power. At this point, I don't think removing it entirely from our teachings would even cause any rift. What do you think? It is a sword technique that cannot be used. Let's just let it go. Still, the ancestors left it behind for. Are we going to teach the kids a technique that they wouldn't use and is a complete waste of their time? You're right. Let's throw it away. Chung Myung clenched his fists. You idiots! You got rid of the good stuff and kept the garbage. This was worse than he'd expected. If Mount Hua kept teaching this nonsense, they'd be lucky if they survived another decade. His blood was boiling. It was as if the very soul of Mount Hua had been ripped out and replaced with cheap knockoffs. And what about the future? If they kept this up, they wouldn't just be declining, they'd be dead. Chung Myung was lost in thought when the senior disciple's voice rang out, cutting through the air like a blade. Who's talking over there? You people, get out here right now. Ah, sit, one of the disciples said to Chung Myung. I'll see you later. I mean it. Chung Myung didn't even respond this time, too tired to care. He was too busy contemplating the monumental task ahead of him. The vein on his forehead was practically throbbing, his frustration reaching a boiling point. This place was messed up from the ground up, and somehow he was supposed to fix it. How? How could he bring back the glory of Mount Hua when the very foundations were crumbling? No money, no people, and the martial arts? It was a disaster. Sahyung, what the hell happened here? As he stood there, lost in thought, one thing was clear. This was going to be one hell of a rough road. And there we have it. Chung Myung, the man with a plan, or at least the boiling frustration to make one. Mount Hua's future was hanging by a thread, and it looked like Chung Myung was the only one who could stop it from snapping. But between clueless disciples and garbage techniques, it wasn't just going to be tough. It was going to be a nightmare. But hey, nothing like a good disaster to keep things interesting, right? All right, let's dive into this chaotic episode with a little extra flavor. Episode 12, Collapsing Was Inevitable, You Bastards, Part 2. Dying is better. Dying is better. Chung Myung stumbled back to the dorms, face looking like he'd just seen the bill after ordering an extra-large feast without his wallet. Nothing was going right. He muttered, people say even a rich man, when he fails, can live 3 years in luxury. Well, from what I'm seeing, 100 years would be a stretch for Mount Hua. This sect was about as financially stable as a broke college student on the last day before payday, and it didn't help that the disciples were in even worse shape. Shitty philosophy, no money, and kids who look like they've barely survived a bad flu, Chung Myung groaned. Even a third-rate sect would do better than this. But what really burned him up? Where did you throw away the 24 plum blossom swords, you bastards? Losing money is one thing, but losing your best sword technique is like forgetting how to make pizza. Utterly unacceptable. Scratching his head, he sighed. Where the hell do I even start? The mess was so bad, it was like trying to fix a collapsed building with a toothpick. He imagined his old Sahyung watching from above. Sahyung, do you think I can save Mount Hua? The universe seemed to reply with a cosmic chuckle. Save? Chung Myung, feeling the weight of the situation, grabbed a handful of dirt and threw it into the sky, because why not? As he returned to the dorm, his back groaned in protest. Ow, my waist! Damn it! He was once strong enough to leap up and down Mount Hua like it was a fun run. Now, one extra training session had him limping like an old man who just tried yoga for the first time. I need to hurry. The more he learned about Mount Hua, the more he realized the whole place was like a sinking ship, and he was holding a bucket with a hole in it. Of course, his current body didn't help either. He was the youngest disciple, not even old enough to drink, and definitely not respected enough to make any changes. Could he, the equivalent of a broke intern, turn Mount Hua around? I need to fix this place, and fast. But even his thoughts were interrupted by a growl from his stomach. Damn it, I didn't even get to eat dinner. As he entered the dorm, he realized things were about to get worse. A bunch of third-generation disciples stood there waiting for him, looking like a group of frat boys about to haze a freshman. One of them, Agul, gave him a dirty look and barked, "Ya! Newbie!" Chung Myung raised his eyebrows. What? This bastard's crazy. Call me Jogul Sayung. Ah, Sahyung. The title that meant senior brother, though in this context, it felt more like the older bully demanding respect. Oh, great, Chung Myung thought. Now I have to call these idiots Sahyung? This day just keeps getting better. But what choice did he have? Yes, Jogul Sahyung, what is it? Jogul grinned. If you're new, you should report. Huh? Don't worry, we won't hit you too hard, Jogul said, laughing with his buddies. The rest of the room chuckled like a bad laugh track from a sitcom. Oh, this crap. Chung Myung had seen dorm life before. It was always the same, people bonding through teasing and light violence. But these guys, they were taking it too far. Report, Jogul repeated. This bastard. Chung Myung knew he'd have to deal with this situation, but he was tired, hungry, and absolutely not in the mood for anyone's crap. Jogul grinned wider, clearly enjoying himself. Take it off. Huh? Did he hear that right? I said, take it off. Chung Myung looked around. The others were watching him like spectators at a gladiator match. His gaze returned to Jogul, who looked smug. Chung Myung tried to keep his cool. Don't get mad, Take it off, Jogul smirked. That's right, strip down, dance a little, get beaten up. That's how we welcome newbies. Oh, hell no. Chung Myung sighed, looking around for Sasakun Guillaume. Maybe someone reasonable is nearby. Nope, no one's coming to save you, Jogul sneered. You're all ours tonight. Chung Myung slowly nodded, realizing how far this would go. Right, no one's going to help me here. Perfect. Jogul grabbed him by the collar. We're doing this because we love you. Gotta make sure you respect your Sahyungs. Chung Myung stared blankly. Sahyung? What? You got something to say? Yeah. Chung Myung's voice turned cold. Clench your teeth. Huh! Bang! Chung Myung's fist connected with Jogul's jaw, sending him flying through the air like a rag doll. With a crash, he slammed into the ceiling, leaving a human-shaped dent. Everything went silent. Chung Myung glanced at Jogul's twitching body, then calmly walked toward the door. One of the disciples stammered, Where are you going? Clank! Chung Myung locked the door, turning back with a grin that promised nothing good. You know, as people go through life, they worry about this and that. But thanks to you, my mind's pretty clear now. He casually cracked his neck, then stomped on a nearby chair, smashing it to pieces. Grabbing one of the chair legs, he held it like a makeshift club. Time to start fixing Mount Hua, and you're first on the list. The disciples' hearts sank as they realized they were about to get a very personal lesson in respect. And so, with a grin on his face and a chair leg in hand, Chung Myung embarked on a one-man mission to teach some manners to the self-proclaimed Sahyungs of Mount Hua. Chung Myung's expression twisted into something that wasn't quite a smile, more like a warning label wrapped around a stick of dynamite. The room was dead silent as he casually walked toward the group of terrified disciples, chair leg in hand, like a butcher eyeing fresh meat. One brave soul from the pack tried to make a run for it. Bad idea. Whack! The chair leg came down with a satisfying crack, and the poor guy dropped like a sack of potatoes. The others could only stare, too frozen in fear to even scream. Chung Myung chuckled. What? Did I break your Sahyung's spirit already? Come on, don't tell me that was it. You're supposed to be the seniors, remember? The seniors were now looking like kindergartners caught doing something wrong. They huddled together, wide-eyed, their bravado shrinking faster than a cheap t-shirt in hot water. Chung Myung tapped the chair leg in his palm. All right, here's the deal. I hit you, you shut up. If anyone screams, well, let's just say I'll be in a more generous mood and give you double. One of the disciples managed a weak smile. Senior, we were just messing around. Senior? Chung Myung interrupted, raising an eyebrow. Oh, now I'm the senior, huh? You know what? I think I like that. Without warning, the chair legs swung again, and another poor soul got acquainted with the floor. 2 down. Who's next? The rest of the room looked around, hoping someone else would take the fall. Chung Myung twirled the chair leg like a pro, smiling all the while. Let's be clear, this isn't because I hate you. It's just that I like peace and quiet, and you guys don't exactly scream peaceful. One by one, the disciples fell, each taking their lumps as if this was some twisted rite of passage, except no one was laughing now. Chung Myung's strikes were quick, precise, and just painful enough to make them think twice about crossing him again. Finally, after what felt like an eternity for the poor bastards, Chung Myung stopped, surveying his work. A dozen disciples lay sprawled across the floor, groaning and clutching various parts of their bodies. The chair leg? It had long since splintered into pieces. Chung Myung dusted off his hands, satisfied. Well, that was fun. He stepped over one of the disciples, who was now curled up in the fetal position, and made his way toward the door. Before he left, he paused, glancing back at the group. Don't worry, you'll heal. Just remember, if anyone wants to play Sahyung again, well, you know where to find me. With that, he unlocked the door and walked out, leaving behind a room full of battered back, humbled, and thoroughly terrified seniors. Outside, the night was peaceful, the cool breeze brushing against his face. Chung Myung stretched his arms, feeling the tension ease from his muscles. Yeah, Mount Hua had a long way to go before it was back to its former glory. But if nothing else, the pecking order had been re-established, and he wasn't at the bottom. As he strolled back to his room, he couldn't help but smirk. Organizing my surroundings, step 1, complete. And there you have it, the rest of Chung Myung's chaotic yet satisfying rampage. Episode 13, Collapsing Was Inevitable, You Bastards, 3. Sahyung. Yes, Sajay. Do it harder. Yes, I will do my best. The hands massaging the shoulder got a bit more enthusiastic. It was like getting a free back rub from someone who had a career in professional kneading. What's your name? It is Yoon Jung. And you are the great Sahyung? Yes, that's right. Chung Myung turned his head just enough to see Yoon Jung's swollen face. It looked like someone had tried to use his face as a punching bag. Still, since you are the great Sahyung, I will treat you well. Thank you. Keep pressing. Yes. Yoon Jung went back to rubbing while Chung Myung turned his head, returning to his contemplative brooding. The other Sahyungs had all assumed the position of professional floor kissers, their heads practically glued to the ground. You all. When Chung Myung spoke, everyone flinched. It was quite a sight, grown men trembling in fear before someone younger. Shouldn't you be helping out in living a quiet life? Shouldn't you? Sahyungs? Yes, we were short-sighted. Chung Myung sighed, clearly unimpressed by their dramatic declarations. Who was Chung Myung? He was one of the 3 great swordsmen, renowned to be the best of the best, second only to Chunma himself. Handling these people was child's play for him. Even if he was a bit weaker now, he could manage a small army of these kids with one hand tied behind his back. Since this was your way of accepting me, I will let this go this time. But from now on, let's try to be more humane. There are lines that shouldn't be crossed. Everyone groaned in agreement, though none of them dared to say a word. Why am I like this? One of them wondered. Feels like a Sasek is yelling at me. It felt like they were dealing with someone who was light years ahead of them. Not just another kid from the sect. Chung Myung clicked his tongue in annoyance. I need to deal with them. The absurdity of the situation was not lost on him. Attention. The command was so sharp it could cut through metal. Immediately, the kids straightened up like soldiers at a drill. No matter how bad Mount Hua's current state is, the children of the most disciplined Mount Hua shouldn't be like this. Chung Myung clicked his tongue again. You need to get back to the sect's original state. The kids exchanged glances. How did this worm crawl in here? Who was the idiot who said this kid was a loser? We're doomed. We're stuck living with him now. Now, they were all crammed into a single dorm. It was like tossing a wild tiger into a pen full of rabbits. Ch-ch. Chung Myung opened his eyes with the intensity of a hawk spotting its prey. Remember. Yes. Now, who here is the most aware of Mount Hua's situation? Hands up. Nobody spoke, but everyone's eyes drifted towards one person. Joe Ghoul's eyes widened in realization. Hand. Raise your hand. Joe Ghoul reluctantly raised his hand, grumbling inwardly. I'll get you for this later, you jerks. After years of living together, he couldn't believe his peers would betray him so easily. Did they have no sense of loyalty? Joe Ghoul gritted his teeth and stepped forward. With a stiff neck, he looked at Chung Myung, who was clearly less than impressed. Sahyung Joe Ghoul. Yes. Even if you are a Sahyung, aren't you being a bit too formal with me? Not at all. Joe Ghoul hurried to touch his neck, pretending it was the reason he couldn't move as smoothly. My neck felt too stiff, so I couldn't move it like usual. Chung Myung clicked his tongue and stood up. Follow me to this room. Yes. The others can rest for today. We'll deal with everything tomorrow. Yes. Sahyung, follow me. As Chung Myung gestured, Joe Ghoul followed like a condemned man walking to his fate. Once they were out of sight, the remaining disciples swarmed Yoonjong. Great, Sahyung. Are you okay? Do I look okay? No. Yoonjong rubbed his swollen eyes, wishing he could complain, but knowing the pain would be gone by morning. If only Sasek were here, he could have stopped this, he thought bitterly. With a sense of resignation, he realized that Chung Myung had planned this whole ordeal. The new kid was already making an impression, one that was deeply unsettling. Now what do we do? Do what? Should we attack him once he goes to bed? Are you volunteering? Someone retorted. The room fell silent as everyone imagined Chung Myung's rampage. No way, we'd be done for. Yoonjong shook his head. The image of Chung Myung was enough to make his throat dry. But, one of the others, deep in thought, asked, why was Joe Ghoul taken away? Sit comfortably. I will stand. Don't worry and sit. I won't hit you. It wasn't because of that. Joe Ghoul hesitated before speaking. I can't bend my back after being hung from the ceiling, so standing is fine. Chung Myung cleared his throat. So, why did you call me? Speak casually, Sahyung. Yes? It's strange hearing you speak so formally. Just talk normally. Yes. Speaking casually? Yes. Chung Myung threw up his hands in surrender. He'd have to wait for the kid to open up in his own time. So why did you call me? Ah, I have a few questions for you. Please answer in as much detail as you can. Okay. Chung Myung leaned in. So, are most of the children here from merchant families? Yes. Chung Myung tapped his chin thoughtfully. Merchants, he mused. In the past, many merchant children wanted to join Mount Hua. However, the sect never accepted them as disciples. It wasn't that merchants were inherently bad. It was more about their motives. Merchant children came to learn martial arts, but didn't intend to embed the sect's teachings into their lives like true disciples. Those from Mount Hua's line came to learn the ways of the sect, intending to lead and protect it. Merchant kids, on the other hand, were just passing through. Most of them leave, which meant even the top disciples teaching today would eventually leave Mount Hua. What is this situation? The dwindling number of disciples meant Mount Hua's prestige was on the line. But Sahyungs are here? What do you mean? Well, there must have been rumors about Mount Hua's condition. Why come all the way here? Ah, that. Joe Ghoul scratched his head. Actually, my father wasn't thrilled about sending me here, but there weren't many sects willing to take me. Even in its current state, Mount Hua is still a significant sect. The connections I could make here would be invaluable. According to Joe Ghoul, the merchant kids who came here were looking to elevate their status. It wasn't surprising. If they had money or talent, they'd be in better sects. Which means even past Mount Hua disciples didn't have much money. The surrounding area must be a mess too. The thought was disheartening. He recalled how his Sahyung used to manage the sect's finances with the precision of a financial wizard. Mount Hua might have avoided its current state with proper management. Then, yes? Are you planning to go back to your family after learning martial arts? Normally, yes. Is that why this place looks so shabby? People who came here just for temporary gains wouldn't care about its state. I get it. Go away now. Then, and, yes? When does the morning training start? It starts at 7. Tell everyone to be ready by 5 and gather them in the hall. Yes? 5 a.m. Yes. And inform the Sahyungs of my instructions. To prepare for tomorrow morning and gather everyone? What, don't like it? Why would I not like it? I'm on it. Yeah, I like that attitude. After Jogul left with a mix of emotions, Chung Myung lay down, contemplating the journey ahead. Even 1,000 miles start with a single step. He didn't remember who said that first, but for Chung Myung, that 1,000-mile journey was going to be filled with obstacles, starting with these kids. Still, it begins with one step, and that first step would be taken with these very kids. Chung Myung lay flat on the bed, mentally preparing himself for the uphill battle ahead. The prospect of molding these kids into respectable disciples seemed daunting, but he was determined to start the transformation. As he closed his eyes, he thought about the challenges and how far Mount Hua had fallen. With its reputation in tatters and its disciples scattered or disillusioned, reviving the sect would be no small feat. The first step was clear. He needed to instill discipline and commitment in these young trainees. They needed to see beyond their immediate discomfort and recognize the value of their training. He had to remind them of the glory of Mount Hua and reignite the spirit of the sect's golden days. Chung Myung reflected on the state of the sect and the drastic measures he had already taken. It wasn't just about making them stronger. It was about changing their mindset and restoring the sect's pride. Meanwhile, Jogul, having exited the room, was faced with the unenviable task of rallying his fellow Sahyungs and preparing them for the early morning training. His thoughts were a mix of dread and determination. He could already envision the grueling training sessions and the stern discipline Chung Myung was likely to impose. As Jogul trudged back to his room, he was met with the curious eyes of his fellow disciples. They were eager to know what had transpired between him and the new Sahyung. The questions were endless, but Jogul was too exhausted to offer more than vague responses. Back in his room, Jogul prepared for bed, though sleep was elusive. His mind raced with the implications of Chung Myung's commands and the changes that were about to unfold. The dawn would bring new challenges, and Chung Myung knew it would be a test of both his patience and his resolve. But he was ready to face whatever came next, committed to the revival of Mount Hua and its legacy. As he drifted into sleep, the weight of responsibility on his shoulders seemed slightly lighter. He was determined to see this through, no matter how tough it got. After all, every great journey began with a single step, and he was ready to take it. Episode 14. Collapsing was inevitable, you bastards. The next day at dawn, as the first light peeked through the cracks in the ancient walls of Mount Hua, a familiar sound echoed through the stillness. Wung! Chung Myung stretched his body like a cat freshly awakened from a nap. His dantian, which had once been as pitiful as a puddle in a drought, was now swelling with energy. It was like watching a tiny seedling suddenly grow into a mighty oak if the oak were to be powered by a supercharger of pure vitality. Wung! Each breath Chung Myung took was like a mini fireworks show, his energy radiating and purifying his body. He was amazed. Wow, he thought. Even after decades of living, I've never seen energy this clean. This is like the gourmet version of martial arts energy. He contemplated the situation, his face twisting in frustration. How long will this take? Mount Hua is facing its doom, and it won't wait for my dantian to grow into Arnold Schwarzenegger mode. Chung Myung's frustration was palpable as he assessed the situation with a grimace. Mount Hua was a mess. No money, no martial arts, and no talent. It was like trying to bake a cake with no ingredients, no recipe, and no oven. But the real kicker? The young talent problem. Talent wasn't something he could just pick up at the local market. He couldn't exactly kidnap prodigies to save the day, though the thought did cross his mind. So, what do we do? He mused. I guess I'll just have to use whatever resources I have, even if that means trying to salvage something from this wreck. He clenched his fists, determined. Despite his previous reluctance to accept disciples, he was now faced with a small army of them. The thought brought a smile to his face, a smile that could only be described as wicked. As the sun rose, the disciples grumbled and groaned. "Why do we need to gather at dawn?" one complained. "Great Sahyung, isn't this a bit excessive?" another whined. Yunjong rolled his eyes. "Just be quiet, you annoying brats," he thought. The disciples from families of various regional powers weren't exactly used to discomfort or waiting around, and the fact that they were still grumbling after only half a day of being beaten showed just how far they had to go. Yunjong glanced at Joe Ghoul, who was at least keeping quiet. How did this nightmare even start, he wondered. The memory of Chung Myung wielding a broken chair leg like a weapon of mass destruction still gave him chills. "Who is this guy?" someone asked in disbelief. "Honestly, I don't know," came the reply. "But he's definitely not your average recruit. I've never seen anyone handle a crowd like that." There was murmuring among the disciples. The consensus was clear. Chung Myung was an enigma, an overpowered monster who had joined them only recently. "Is he going to hit us again?" one disciple asked with a shudder. Jogul, known for his impressive skills, shook his head in agreement. "If you don't want to get hit again, just stay quiet and follow his orders." Even Jogul, confident in his own abilities, felt like a rabbit in front of a lion compared to Chung Myung. As the disciples wondered about the strange tools laid out before them, long wooden rods, sand-filled pouches, and the like, Chung Myung emerged with an expression that screamed irritation. "Why does he look so annoyed?" one disciple whispered. "If you're that bothered, don't gather us like this," another muttered. Chung Myung scanned the crowd with a disinterested look. "Is everyone here?" "Yes," the disciples replied, trying to sound enthusiastic while barely masking their anxiety. "Keep it down," Chung Myung warned, "or the Sassaks will wake up." He stretched his neck and continued, "We'll be living together for the foreseeable future. Who knows? We might even end up spending the rest of our lives together." The disciples exchanged nervous glances. Even those who had sworn to stay with Mount Hua now considered making a run for it. "But here's the thing," Chung Myung said with a sly grin, "you're all too weak." A collective gasp rose from the crowd. Weak was a dirty word in the martial arts world. No one could argue with the fact that Chung Myung had beaten over 30 of them without breaking a sweat. "Martial arts aren't everything," he conceded. "But if you've chosen to study at Mount Hua, then you should aim to be as strong as possible." Murmurs of agreement came from the crowd, though none were particularly enthusiastic about the prospect of daily practice. Someone raised their hand. "Do we have to do this?" Chung Myung fixed them with a bitter look before turning to Yunjong. "What's the deal with this guy?" Yunjong, caught off guard, stammered, "It's because not everyone was there during the event." Chung Myung's face darkened. "So you don't want to train?" The new disciple, clearly out of his depth, received a harsh reminder of his place. "Yes, a person must be polite," Chung Myung said with a nod. "Those who aren't interested in becoming strong or training, raise your hand." A handful of hands went up, indicating that a dozen or so disciples weren't committed. "Fine, if martial arts aren't your thing, go inside," Chung Myung said with a dismissive wave. The faces of Joe Ghoul and Yoon Jong turned pale as the children, oblivious to their impending. Episode 14. Collapsing was inevitable, you bastards. The practice began with Chung Myung's unyielding enthusiasm. He was determined to turn these weaklings into martial arts prodigies. He paced back and forth, demonstrating techniques with an almost sadistic glee. "Remember," he said with a grin, "the key to martial arts is not just strength, but also discipline. Let's see if you can handle both." The disciples struggled through the exercises, their earlier bravado long gone. Every movement was a painful reminder of how out of shape they were. Chung Myung, however, seemed to relish their discomfort. "Faster!" he barked. "I want to see sweat, not tears." "Wait, no. If you're crying, that's actually a sign you're doing it right." The hours dragged on as Chung Myung pushed them harder. The disciples collapsed one by one, their faces pale and drenched in sweat. Chung Myung continued to drill them, offering no respite. At the end of the grueling session, Chung Myung finally called a halt. The disciples were barely able to stand, their spirits as crushed as their bodies. "All right," Chung Myung announced. "That's enough for today. Get some rest and be ready for tomorrow. We have a lot more to cover." As the exhausted disciples stumbled away, Chung Myung turned to Yoonjong and Jo Gul, who had been watching from the sidelines. "I trust you'll be here bright and early?" he asked with a knowing smirk. "Of course," Yoonjong replied, trying to hide his exhaustion. "We wouldn't miss it for the world." Jo Gul, still shaking from the earlier ordeal, merely nodded in agreement. Chung Myung clapped them on the back with exaggerated enthusiasm. "Good. Let's make sure these kids learn what it means to be real martial artists." As he watched the disciples leave, Chung Myung couldn't help but feel a sense of satisfaction. It was going to be a long road, but he was ready to make Mount Hua great again, one grueling lesson at a time. The sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows over Mount Hua. Chung Myung, still full of energy, smiled to himself. He knew that while the path ahead was fraught with challenges, it was also filled with potential. And as the night settled in, he prepared himself for another day of turning weaklings into warriors. After all, he had a reputation to uphold and a sect to save. Episode 15, Collapsing Was Inevitable, You Bastards? Eun woke reluctantly from bed, squinting against the bright sunlight. He groaned, clearly annoyed. These brats, he thought. Back in the day, disciples used to have this charming little routine where they'd wake up their teacher and make him breakfast. But now, those quaint traditions had fallen by the wayside. Today, however, no one bothered to wake him. "Ha! These kids," he grumbled. "Leave them alone for a minute, and they turn into slackers." Eun frowned, pulling himself up. If any of his disciples were awake, they'd have come to wake him. The fact that no one had shown up meant all the kids in the White Plum Blossom dorms were still snoozing. But wait a minute. Just because they didn't wake him didn't necessarily mean they were asleep. Come to think of it, he mused. There was a new recruit who joined the dorm yesterday. Are those brats messing around again? He sighed. He knew his young disciples had a penchant for hazing newbies, but he was usually confident that Yoonjong would keep things under control. But the silence from the dorm meant things had probably gone sideways. Eun quickly got dressed, strapping on his robe and sword. He marched over to the dorm, ready to scare some sense into the kids. But the moment he turned the corner, he froze. "Go! Out!" Eun was about to shout when he stopped himself, rubbing his eyes in disbelief. What he saw was straight out of a nightmare. What is this? Mount Hua looked like it had been hit by an apocalyptic disaster. He blinked, wondering if he'd gone mad. Was he hallucinating, or was this really happening? The scene before him made him question his sanity. Ugh! Despairing groans echoed from the bedraggled figures sprawled on the ground. Ugh! Ah! I'm gonna die! Ugh! Mother, take me home. Eun stared, slack-jawed. Were these really his disciples? The same kids who had once made him grumble and shake his head in frustration were now lying around in the pathetic state of starved beggars. Who are these ragged kids? His disciples had transformed from innocents into worn-out husks. Eun looked around at the wooden swords and strange pouches scattered about. What the hell has happened here? As soon as he spoke, the kids, who looked like they just crawled out of a war zone, turned their pained faces toward him. "Sasuk! Lord Sasuk! Oh, heavenly Lord!" Their voices were as strange as their condition, but they greeted him with an enthusiasm that was almost unsettling. "Cough, Sasuk! Why are you here so late? Why? I missed Sasuk so much." Their display of affection was touching but bewildering. Eun felt a strange, warm pride. No, he quickly corrected himself. It wasn't time to get sentimental. His disciples were battered and barely conscious. He needed to know what had happened. Just what happened here? The kids, who looked like they were on the brink of tears, hesitated before glancing nervously to the back. Are they afraid to speak? Eunjiam's gaze followed their eyes to a figure in the distance. Jo Gul? No. The other one. Other? He looked further back and froze. He is? Eunjiam's eyes widened in disbelief. The new kid, Chung Myung, was performing what looked like the most bizarre and grueling workout session imaginable. He had a wooden rod across his shoulders, with large pouches hanging from either side. What's in those pouches? Those are dirt bags. Why dirt bags? Eun asked, even though he had a sinking feeling he knew the answer. Weights. Watching Chung Myung, Eun saw him struggling but determined, his body shaking under the strain. Sweat poured from him like a fountain. Will he die like this? Eunjeom watched in horror as Chung Myung's face turned red and veins bulged. The kid was clearly pushing himself to the brink. "You'll die like that, you brat." Eunjeom was all for rigorous training, but this was pushing the limits. Wait, so the reason why these kids are here? Was it because they were training together? "Sasuk, save me! We will die this way." The kids, drenched in sweat, were in a state of complete misery. The fact that this was all sweat gave Eunjeom the chills. Then, they weren't sleeping? Had they been at this since dawn? When did you start training? Since 5. So they'd been at it for over an hour? Why? No one answered, their faces filled with desperation. No way. Eunjeom couldn't believe it. These were the disciples of Mount Hua, practicing martial arts for years, and now they were collapsing under the pressure of one newbie? Wait. Jogul, usually one of the strongest, was on the floor, struggling to breathe. What about Yoonjong? Eungeum scanned the area for Yoonjong. Oh my. Yoonjong lay flat on the ground, his soul seemingly having taken a vacation. He was gasping for air, tears welling up in his eyes. Eunjeom opened his mouth, then closed it again. No, training is good, but wasn't it clear what happened? The kids had woken up early to do strength training. Even though Mount Hua focused on speed and finesse, strength training was a part of their regimen. But what the hell does it mean that only 1 hour of training made everyone like this? Eunjeom wiped the sweat off his own brow, feeling like he was about to join the kids on the ground. The kids were looking at him with hopeful eyes, waiting for him to fix everything. Don't look at me like that. It was all too much. Kwa. Eunjeom cleared his throat and decided to address Chung Myung. He needed to figure out what was going on and how to handle it. Bring that kid here. At that moment, Eunjeom made a mental note of Chung Myung's name. Little did he know, this would be the most important name he would learn in his life. Episode 16. Mount Hua is like this because of me? 1? Phew! Eunjeom's eyes sparkled like a kid who's just seen their first puppy. He gazed, almost hypnotized, at the clear blue sky. This kid seemed pretty normal at first, right? But boy, was he wrong. Is he going to be okay? Chung Myung's uniform was clinging to him like a second skin, drenched in sweat. His face was as red as a tomato, and his legs trembled like jelly. He was biting his lips so hard it looked like he was trying to hold in a secret. Would you like to sit? Eungeum, a man who treats courtesy like a religion, couldn't help but offer a seat. After all, seeing Chung Myung's condition was like watching a puppy left out in the rain. Sad and pitiful. Ah, it's fine. Rather, I'd prefer a little water. Someone get water, now! Yes! One of the kids, who was watching the scene like a live-action drama, scrambled to fetch some water. Right? That. But Eunjeom fell silent, as if struck by a sudden brain freeze. What do I even ask here? He called for Chung Myung, but now he didn't know where to start. This was his first time dealing with something this absurd. What is going on here? The question was as obvious as a neon sign. Chung Myung looked around calmly, like a teacher explaining a lesson. It's nothing much? What? It's just that, starting today, we decided to exercise together in the mornings. But since it was our first time, we might have overdone it a bit. Everyone was so motivated. Motivated? Eunjeom glanced at the kids behind Chung Myung. They were waving their hands like they were at a rock concert, but their mouths were sealed tighter than a drum. The moment Chung Myung turned his head, their hands fell like deflated balloons. What kind of performance is this? It was utterly bizarre. It was clear as day. All the disciples were scared stiff of this new kid. Eunjeom wasn't new to handling kids and training young disciples. With 10 years under his belt, he could usually figure out what was happening just by watching. No, it would have been more strange if he hadn't noticed. The disciples of Mount Hua. Are they afraid of a newbie? Eunjeom tilted his head in disbelief. No. These kids weren't weaklings. Most kids their age would look up to Mount Hua's disciples with envy. Even if the sect was a bit of a mess, these kids were still disciples of the once mighty Mount Hua. It wasn't that his disciples were weak, it was just that this new kid was a total enigma. Did you say morning exercise? Yes. You. Eunjeom spoke firmly, channeling his inner authority. The White Plum Blossom boarding house has its own rules. Who told you to cut your sleep short and train as you please? Chung Myung remained unperturbed, like he'd just been told the sky was blue. Then I won't do it. Huh? I thought training would be helpful, but since you said no, I won't do it. Unjiam was utterly confused. This reaction was like trying to make sense of a cat barking. You thought training would be helpful? Yes. Why did you think that? Chung Myung raised an eyebrow, as if the question itself was absurd. You don't think it'll help? An awkward silence hovered between them like a cloud of uncertainty. Ugh, Unjiam groaned inwardly. He got the gist of what the kid was saying, but Chung Myung spoke up first. I thought learning martial arts from Sasuk was enough, but the disciples need to show effort in their own way. Martial arts are about the body, so I figured this strength training would boost our overall results. Well, that made sense. The theory was spot on. Your words are right. Eun-gyeom agreed without hesitation. However, is it correct to train under threat of coercion? Coercion? Chung Myung glanced back nonchalantly. Ah, Sasuk, I'd never force my Sahyungs. When I said I was going to train, they said they wanted to join and followed me. A bold-faced lie. But if Eun-gyeom wanted the truth, he'd have to ask, did they join out of sheer terror? But can't ask that. It would hurt the pride of his disciples. Yesterday, the disciples couldn't handle one new kid and were dragged out to train in fear. Eun-gyeom decided to avoid touching that sensitive issue. And if this made Chung Myung seem like a terrifying villain who pushed his Sahyungs to their limits, that could also backfire. Just as Eun-gyeom was about to speak, Chung Myung cut in. Give me 1 month. I won't let it interfere with our regular training, and in 1 month, I'll show you good results. Oh. Even though they were talking training, Chung Myung's hidden agenda was a bit different. 1 month, he asked Sasuk to hold off and judge the situation after seeing the results. Look at this kid. He spoke with the confidence of a seasoned pro, not a child. 1 month might be acceptable, but can the kids really endure this training? The Sahyungs practiced because they wanted to, and no one complained about the difficulty. Chung Myung spoke boldly, glancing at his Sahyungs, who were all silent. If they didn't speak up, they must have been okay with it. Where did this kid come from? As Eun-gyeom pondered, Chung Myung turned to the disciples. Isn't that right, Sahyungs? Yes, it is. We will work hard, very hard. We worked hard today, too. Chung Myung turned back, a vision of determination. Without a strong will to grow, how could we expect good results from our efforts? The kids behind him looked shell-shocked and utterly exhausted. Eun-gyeom was speechless. Chung Myung had completely taken control of the disciples within a single day. Now he was asking for a month to prove himself. This is getting ridiculous. Where did this little dynamo come from? But it's not entirely bad. The White Plum Blossom boarding house had a serious issue with training time. Mount Hua was severely understaffed. Eun-gyeom couldn't manage it alone. At least 10 instructors were needed. Right now, there were only 3 who could train the kids. Consequently, there wasn't enough time for one-on-one teaching, and progress had stalled. It would be a massive help if this kid could ease his burden. I'll ask you one more thing. Yes, it won't be easy for you either. Why choose to train so early in the morning? Chung Myung tilted his head innocently. I don't understand what you mean, Sasuk. There was no way this kid suddenly didn't understand. To join Mount Hua means to learn the sword, but just joining doesn't make us stronger. Becoming stronger requires diligent training and striving for higher goals. It's only natural to sacrifice some sleep to work harder. Right. That's the spirit. There's no particular reason, just pure passion. The sect leader said we'd no longer accept new students. I wonder what kind of child would get an exception. Maybe a new wind is blowing at Mount Hua. It might be worth investing in this kid. His talent wasn't confirmed yet, but with such motivation, he could be a great asset. Even if he didn't become a master, his attitude could positively impact the other children. You seem to be having a hard time with your training. It's just the first day. Still, it seems difficult. The more we do, the better the results. Eun-gyeom's lips twitched as he tried to suppress a smile. This fits perfectly with my theory. Pushing the others to their limits could be beneficial if this kid leads them. After all, in the sect's glory days, hierarchies among children weren't strictly age-based. And what is important when dealing with Sahyungs? Be polite, show respect, and follow their words. Maintaining the hierarchy while showing proper respect to elders without looking down on others. Eun-gyeom surveyed the scene and nodded. The kids were all in a state of confused worry. Kwa! Ungium cleared his throat and spoke with a touch of sentimentality. It's quite touching that you all were voluntarily training from dawn till now. Sasek! Master! Confused shouts and gasps followed, but Ungeam ignored them and continued. If you continue to train like this, you'll achieve great results. This child seems to know much about training, so I'll allow you to continue. Give it your best. We're doomed. Wow, he's totally abandoning us. Look at him avoiding our gaze. The young disciples were in despair. Then, make sure to have breakfast before it gets late and be on time for the Episode 16. Mount Hua is like this because of me? One? Phew! Unjiam's eyes sparkled like a kid who's just seen their first puppy. He gazed, almost hypnotized, at the clear blue sky. This kid seemed pretty normal at first, right? But boy, was he wrong. Is he going to be okay? Chung Myung's uniform was clinging to him like a second skin, drenched in sweat. His face was as red as a tomato, and his legs trembled like jelly. He was biting his lips so hard it looked like he was trying to hold in a secret. Would you like to sit? Ungium, a man who treats courtesy like a religion, couldn't help but offer a seat. After all, seeing Chung Myung's condition was like watching a puppy left out in the rain. Sad and pitiful. Ah, it's fine. Rather, I'd prefer a little water. Someone get water, now! Yes! One of the kids, who was watching the scene like a live-action drama, scrambled to fetch some water. Right? That. But Unjiam fell silent, as if struck by a sudden brain freeze. What do I even ask here? He called for Chung Myung, but now he didn't know where to start. This was his first time dealing with something this absurd. What is going on here? The question was as obvious as a neon sign. Chung Myung looked around calmly, like a teacher explaining a lesson. It's nothing much? What? It's just that, starting today, we decided to exercise together in the mornings, turned away, leaving the disciples stunned. Crack. At that moment, a faint crackling sound echoed through the air. It was Chung Myung cracking his knuckles. He turned to his fellow disciples with a grin that was more menacing than friendly. The veins on his forehead were bulging, making it clear that his smile was anything but warm. Sasuk, help me, please? It's not like I said I was going to kill you. Now, my dear Sahyungs, how about we have a little chat in the boarding house before our meal? Move it, yes. And so, the young hopes and dreams of Mount Hua were dashed in an instant. Episode 17. Mount Hua is like this because of me? Are you serious? Yes, Sahyung. Unam's face began to contort like a pretzel. Unjeom tilted his head, clearly puzzled by the dramatic reaction. You didn't know? How could I have known? Huh, I thought the sect leader had some grand scheme involving that child. Turns out, he didn't. We're barely scraping by as it is. We can't afford to spend extra trying to recruit hidden talents. That kid came to us on his own. And the sect leader took him in. Unjiam paused. So the sect leader, who had sworn off taking in more disciples, had taken this child under his wing? He must have thought there was a deeper plot at work. But no, apparently the wind of change hitting Mount Hua wasn't some cunning plan. It seemed that Unam was just as clueless. Is there a secret only the sect leader knows? Nope. That kid really showed up on his own. How intriguing. Unam mused. The more I think about it, the more bizarre this is. A kid traveling solo from far away, claiming to want to be a disciple of Mount Hua, and within a day he's shaking things up? Or maybe I'm just overthinking. Ungiam briefly considered if this kid might be a spy from another sect sent to hasten their downfall, but it seemed far-fetched. First, Mount Hua was already in a pitiful state, teetering on the brink of collapse. Second, sending a kid without the requisite skills seemed pointless. If a talented child existed, they would be nurtured, not left to rot here. If that's the case, shouldn't we keep an eye on him? Let him be. But Sahyung? You didn't stop him because you didn't believe he could meet your expectations, did you? Instead of answering, Ungeam simply hung his head. I know how hard you've worked. It's only natural for you to lead the disciples, but even you can't do everything alone. No, Sahyung, it's all right. Unam chuckled softly. It's tough for everyone. I'm unsure of what he's thinking, but if you believe it will benefit Mount Hua, there's no need to stop him. Unjeom lifted his gaze to meet Unam's. I'm not sure. That kid. Unjeom. Yes, Sahyung. That child is now a disciple of Mount Hua. Unjeom's eyes twitched slightly. Sometimes we may be biased toward a child who comes first. However, all who come to Mount Hua must be treated as disciples, regardless of when they arrive. I was short-sighted. Unjeom bowed his head in regret. Even if he crosses the line, it won't be too late to stop him then. Yes, Sayung. Unjeom stood up to leave. Sure. Unam poured himself a cup of tea as Unjeom walked away. What a peculiar boy. Indeed, a strange child had arrived in the sect. He was a kid who didn't bother hiding his presence despite the chaos he brought. Whether these changes would be a blessing or a curse remained unknown. One thing was certain. Change is necessary. Mount Hua needed a new wind. Drifting in the open sea without wind leaves you lost and starving. Even if the destination is uncertain, you must set sail. Whether it's paradise or a desolate island, anything's better than dying aimlessly at sea. Unam sipped his tea. He hoped Chung Myung could be the wind to move Mount Hua. Of course, whether he could stay calm when the wind turned into a typhoon was another matter. I think I am going to die. I am already dead. A chorus of pained wails echoed from all around. Now, of course, those who were speaking on the brink of death were Mount Hua's third-class disciples. What fresh hell is this? A new type of torture? They knew it was supposed to be a muscle-building exercise, but it wasn't like Mount Hua had neglected strength training. A solid body was the foundation of all martial arts, and even the Shaolin sect had its own grueling training regimen. But this is absurd. Yunjong lowered his head and stared at the table. Stir-fried vegetables were served as a side dish, but his hands were trembling so much he couldn't get them in his mouth, spilling food all over the table. Ugh, I can't even eat properly. We have swordsmanship training in the afternoon. Will I be able to swing my sword with hands shaking like this? If it was a real sword, wouldn't it fly out of my hand and pierce someone's ass? Thankfully, I don't think I have enough strength in my arms to swing with that much power. Are you really thankful for that? Yunjong sighed. Speak your complaints to his face. To his face. If they wanted to complain, shouldn't they do it directly? What's the point in talking behind his back? There's nothing I can do. Great Sayung! Groans emerged from the crowd. However, Yunjong just silently picked up the stir-fried vegetables. What could be done now that Ungeom had sided with Chung Myung? Sayung, in situations like this, shouldn't Sayung's opinion hold some weight? Yunjong sighed and was about to respond when a sharp voice cut through. How pathetic, what a rotten conversation. The crowd of third-class disciples turned in unison toward the source of the voice. Joe Gul? There was a moment of silence before Joe Gul, who was quietly eating in the corner, spoke sharply. Do you think Great Sahyung is your errand boy? Chung Myung isn't hiding from you. If you have something to say, go tell him directly. No, we were. If you can't speak up in person, just shut up and eat. If you don't eat, you'll be useless in the afternoon. No one could argue with Joe Gul's sharp words. Yunjong's gaze met Joe Gul's. He's acting weird. If this were the usual Joe Gul, he'd be the loudest complainer about Chung Myung. After all, he was the strongest and most vocal among the third-class disciples. When even Joe Gul was backing Chung Myung, it made it difficult for others to speak out. Tak, Joe Gul put down his chopsticks and approached Yunjong. Great Sayung. Can I talk to you for a moment? Sure. Yunjong put down his chopsticks and stood up. The remaining disciples watched them leave, puzzled. Are we missing something? Yunjong spoke first once they were in a secluded spot. You look pretty ticked off. Joe Gul rubbed his face, looking annoyed. Is that how I look? Your face is quite expressive. That's a new one for me. Joe Gul chuckled. Even after all that training, you can laugh like that? Sahyung. Huh. What do you think of Mount Hua? Yunjong fell silent. It was a delicate subject that required careful consideration. It's a tough question. I was planning to go back to my hometown after this, but aren't you planning to stay here? Yes. Yunjong nodded solemnly. He had already resolved to stay here. The other third-class disciples had yet to decide, but he would remain at Mount Hua and live or die with it. Do you believe Mount Hua has any future left? Mind your tongue. That's not something to say so recklessly. I couldn't see any hope left. Yunjong couldn't outright condemn Joe Gul. He'd had similar thoughts before. Do you mean you've changed your mind? A little. It's changed? I was pushed to my limits with this training. I've never experienced anything like it before. Yunjong nodded, understanding. He had never pushed himself this hard either. He always thought he was doing his best, but now his body was trembling. But Chung Myung didn't seem tired at all, even after doing twice what we did. Twice the effort? Chung Myung not only did double the repetitions, but also used heavier weights. Yoon Jong had checked the weights himself and was stunned to see Chung Myung lifting more than his own body weight. He's strong. Not just strong, but younger than us too. He couldn't have been born this way. He must have trained hard to get here. You're right. Sahyung, I thought it would be impossible to become strong in Mount Hua. I thought I'd stagnate and leave without ever achieving anything significant. Jo Gul, let me finish, Sahyung. Jo Gul gulped and continued. But seeing Chung Myung, I realized I was wrong. Is there anyone our age who can even compare with him? I don't think so. Despite being the oldest, Yoonjong wasn't the best among the third-class disciples, but he was confident in his skills. He was sure he could hold his own against disciples from the great sects. But Chung Myung flipped Yoonjong upside down with a single finger and knocked Jo Gul, who was stronger, into the ceiling. How could another monster like him exist? It doesn't matter which martial arts you learn. What's important is how you learn. I used to think it was just an empty phrase. Seeing him now, I realize it's true. Sahyung, I want to give my all. I feel the same. Jo Gul nodded in agreement. So, Sahyung, please. This might be our chance for a massive change. Even if Chung Myung is a bit sarcastic and arrogant, let's follow him for now. Yoonjong looked at Jo Gul. Jo Gul had exceptional skills and could grasp the flow of things due to his experiences outside the sect. If someone like him, who had the potential to be successful in any field, was speaking this way, let's do it. Sahyung, you're right. As of now, nothing else matters. I've decided to stay at Mount Hua until the end. I will do whatever I can to help. At Yoonjong's words, Jo Gul nodded. It's funny, though. All of this is because of the youngest disciple who joined us yesterday. He may be the youngest, but he's far from ordinary. True enough. The two shared a light smile and turned around. Their conversation was over. Despite their youthful demeanor, they seemed surprisingly wise. Gul? Yes, Sahyung? Can we really become strong? One thing is certain. If we can't become strong, then we can always train harder. Such comforting words. The two returned after this brief exchange, still unaware that they were being watched. All right, let's add a touch of adult humor to this episode while keeping the original content intact. Here we go. Mount Hua, currently a hot mess, and Chung Myung's not feeling too benevolent about it. He's lounging like a cat with a rice ball, spying on the ongoing chaos. Kuak! I was never this soft-hearted, he grumbles, contemplating how his presence has pretty much turned Mount Hua into a circus. He decides to let the Sahyungs have a meal in peace. After all, there's only so much satisfaction one can derive from making others starve while munching on rice balls. Besides, they deserve a decent meal for all the trouble he's caused. He pats his stomach and sighs, reflecting, I really stirred up a bigger storm than I meant to. Those kids went and poked the proverbial tiger in its sleep, and now look at me, having to deal with the mess. His reflection takes him to his conversation with Eun-geom. It was easier than he thought. Eun-geom understood him perfectly. At least someone here is smart, Chung Myung muses, though he's puzzled by his own respectful acknowledgement. He shakes his head. Smart, but what a mess. Then he spots Yoonjong and Jo Gul strutting into the dining hall. Ah, these two are real gems, he muses, admiring their resilience. Most would be moaning and groaning with complaints if pushed so hard, but not them. Jo Gul especially catches his eye. Despite getting thrashed by someone younger, Jo Gul's driven, motivated, and itching to improve. Chung Myung is almost tempted to give him a medal, or at least some spare change. If I train him right, he's going to be a gem, he smirks, biting into his rice ball. He's got grand plans for Mount Hua, beginning with some serious body strengthening. Because, as he puts it, a pretty sword needs a solid base. No one wants a dazzling sword if the guy swinging it is as weak as a wet noodle. He chuckles at the thought of his own grandiose plans for Mount Hua. It's not just about looking good, it's about being deadly. His internal ranting sounds like the grumbling of a man trying to turn a bunch of amateur cooks into Michelin star chefs. This is so complicated, he mutters, scratching his head. Why can't I just stab him and be done with it? If only life was as simple as a quick stab rather than complex martial arts training. Meanwhile, Joe Ghoul's anxiety is palpable as he's asked to detail all the martial arts taught. He's clearly rattled, and Chung Myung's irritation grows as he reads the pitiful list. "This is it," he repeats, like a broken record. "Seriously, are you trying to sabotage Mount Hua, or is this some kind of joke?" The Tai Flummox sword doesn't even meet his low standards, and he starts feeling like he's living in a slapstick comedy rather than a martial arts drama. What's next? Tai Flummox sword? That's like trying to build a house with popsicle sticks. He learns that during a demonic cult attack, the west building went up in flames, and his mind races. "So, let me get this straight," he says. "All this disaster, and it's all supposedly because of me?" Joe Ghoul's explanations only make him laugh in disbelief. "So, the heavenly demon's dead, and no one even knows who did it." He chuckles, imagining his heroic sacrifice for the cause, only for it to be lost in the annals of forgotten history. He concludes with a dramatic, almost theatrical laugh. "Ha ha! What a mess! How am I supposed to fix this?" Chung Myung bursts into laughter, imagining the absurdity of his situation. "Ha ha ha! Seriously, what a farce!" He tries to steady himself, but the absurdity of the situation keeps him chuckling. "Why are you laughing all of a sudden?" Joe Ghoul asks, clearly bewildered. "Ha! Oh, you wouldn't believe it if I told you." Chung Myung continues, his laughter echoing like a jester reveling in chaos. "All this chaos, and I'm the one who's going to fix it." Joe Ghoul stares, unsure if Chung Myung has completely lost it, or if there's some method to this madness. The thought of Chung Myung, with all his quirks and mess-ups, being the key to Mount Hua's salvation is both amusing and oddly comforting. As Chung Myung wipes tears of laughter from his eyes, he looks at Joe Ghoul. "You know what? Maybe it's best if we just keep going and see what happens. I need to see how bad things really are before we start cleaning up this mess." Joe Ghoul nods, though his expression says he's still unsure what kind of ride he's in for. "All right, Sahyung, whatever you say." "Perfect," Chung Myung exclaims, finally calming down. "Let's dive into this ridiculous mess and figure out how to turn Mount Hua from a punchline into a powerhouse. One way or another, we're going to make this work." With a deep breath, he gets up, ready to tackle the daunting task ahead. Let's get to it. Episode 19, Mount Hua is like this because of me? 4. So, Chung Myung was starting to piece things together. Mount Hua was basically in ruins, and as it turns out, the demon sect had its dirty little fingerprints all over it. Of course, the survivors, who had evidently missed the memo about lay low after getting your butts kicked for revenge. Ah, damn! Chung Myung threw the paper away, probably wishing he could throw his frustration with it. Everything that should have been recognized, read, anyone who actually mattered, was dead, and those left behind were clearly having a one-sided reunion with disaster. Meanwhile, the baddies from the demon sect were alive and kicking, apparently with a grudge that was still fresh. What the hell is this? Joe Ghoul, ever the observer, took a step back, probably wondering if he should be worried about Chung Myung's sudden mood swing. Why are you suddenly angry? Kuak! Chung Myung rubbed his face, trying to wrestle his emotions back into check. Because, showing you're upset in front of Joe Ghoul is basically like giving away the secret ingredient in Grandma's famous cookies. So, those bastards stormed in and wiped out Mount Hua? I don't think the damage was that great. They also spent a lot of energy getting here, since they came through a difficult path. Quite a few of the buildings burned down, and many of our martial arts were lost in the process. Sure, because burning stuff down and losing martial arts is totally on the list of things that aren't a big deal. Mount Hua had seen better days, and Chung Myung was feeling the weight of that reality like a ton of bricks. But he wasn't going to let it ruin his day, or so he told himself. I can explain. Yeah, it was already explained, but why did it feel like someone had dropped a piano on his head? Okay, I get it. Chung Myung stood up from his seat, probably needing to clear his head and take a walk, which in his case was like saying, I need a mental vacation, only less beach and more brooding. Where are you going? A walk. I need to clear my head for a moment. Sasuk will come to check on us soon. We may end up being scolded. Right. Thank you. Joe Ghoul watched as Chung Myung exited, probably thinking, I don't get this guy at all. As Chung Myung stepped outside, his frustration was like a firestorm raging inside him, but his face was as cool as a cucumber, irony at its finest. He risked everything to slay the demon, only to have his sect get smashed to bits? Where's the cosmic justice in that? His thoughts were a mess as he tried to come to grips with the situation. He could no longer even muster anger at the pitiful state of the elders. It was clear why things had gone so badly. Sometimes it just rains cats and dogs. I don't get it. What kind of loyalty did those people have? If the heavenly demon was taken out, they should have huddled up and lived in fear, not marched straight to Mount Hua for some revenge play. But nope, they had to make the trip like it was their annual pilgrimage. Should I call us fortunate, or were we unlucky? A few things were damaged, but hey, who needs an intact sect when you've got more damage? Sigh. Sitting alone on the rooftop and watching the sunset, Chung Myung tried to soothe his mind, even as the nightfall seemed to echo his dark thoughts. That's just how the world is. The real kick in the teeth was that his successors were suffering because of his actions. If he'd lived longer, he might have stopped the whole mess. But no, the young disciples had to deal with the aftermath of his epic showdown. What can I do? No one could blame Chung Myung for the mess, but man, it didn't make it any less frustrating. It was like cleaning up after a party you didn't even get to enjoy. Well, the past is the past. If it's broken, then we can just rebuild it. Because of course, when life gives you a ruined sect, you just pull yourself up by your bootstraps and start over. Easy peasy. Chung Myung took a deep breath, determined to turn things around. He knew it wouldn't be a walk in the park, more like a trek through a minefield. But impatience was his enemy. He had to pace himself. All right, let's take it easy. First step, assess the damage. And what better way to do that than by asking someone, where is the sect leader? Come on out! Ah, the sect leader. Who said that? Chung Myung's eyes widened as he turned toward the commotion coming from the main gate. The main gate? There was a loud clamor. Not exactly the type of noise you expect when the sun's setting and people should be winding down. Sect leader, get out here. The gate rattled, and Chung Myung, in his daze, couldn't believe his eyes. They were breaking down the gate of Mount Hua, the sacred, hallowed gate. What is going on? Let's go in. Dozens of people were storming in like they were crashing a party they weren't invited to. The gate crumbled, and it was like a scene from a disaster movie. Wait, you can't do this. But the intruders were unstoppable. They barged right through, ignoring the elders who were trying and failing to hold them back. Get out of my way right now. Won't you move? Tell him to come out. Sect leader. The scene was utter chaos. The elders were stepping back like they'd been punched, despite the fact that they were stronger than the intruders. Before Chung Myung could piece together what was happening, the intruders had reached the sect leader's residence. Sect leader, come out right now. Don't even think of running away. I know you are in there. I am not going to let you have your way today. Come out. Chung Myung's head was spinning. What was going on here? Then it hit him. Kick! The door creaked open, and Hyunjong, the sect leader, emerged with an air of dignified calm. What are you doing here at this late hour? While Chung Myung seethed, Hyunjong remained composed. It was almost like he was practicing for some grand performance. Every gesture and word had an air of nobility. Until, what nonsense are you asking? Come down, right now. Why are you acting all calm? Hyunjong's serene demeanor cracked. I didn't run, nor did I hide. Where would I go if I left Mount Hua? So calm down. Quiet that mouth of yours. Chung Myung's anger boiled over. Despite the respectful tone, the intruders were having none of it. What was really bizarre was how Hyunjong was acting so meekly, not like the leader Chung Myung expected. A particular word struck Chung Myung's mind. Sect leader. The representative of the mob pointed at Hyunjong. We have waited long enough. We can't wait any longer. Hyunjong's calm demeanor vanished faster than a magician's rabbit. When will you pay our money back? The payment date passed long ago. We can't wait any longer. Chung Myung was stunned. Debt collectors? In the midst of sect destruction? Tears welled up in his eyes. It was like watching a tragicomedy. A ruined sect, and now they owed money? Really? This place is full of crazy people. And with that, Chung Myung had a sinking realization that his already bad day had just gotten exponentially worse. Chung Myung was left with his mouth slightly agape, unable to process the absurdity of the situation. Debt collectors were demanding payment from the sect leader while the sect itself was in tatters. What a delightful cherry on top of the disaster sundae. Wait, are you kidding me? Chung Myung thought. The sect's downfall and the remaining debts were like adding insult to injury, except the insult was a full-blown assault with a side of bankruptcy. Hunjong, now thoroughly flustered, tried to salvage some dignity, though it was clear that his usual composed self was nowhere to be found. If you could just give me a bit more time, Hanjong stammered, clearly at a loss. More time? You've had enough time, one of the debt collectors barked. Chung Myung's head was spinning. He could hardly believe it. The once proud and dignified Mount Hua was now a shadow of its former self, and the remaining debts seemed to be the least of their problems. As he watched the scene unfold, Chung felt a deep, unshakable despair. The weight of his responsibility for Mount Hua was palpable. It wasn't just about rebuilding. It was about dealing with the fallout of his actions and the absurd reality of a sect in ruin being hounded by creditors. His mind raced through possibilities. How could he fix this mess? How could he bring Mount Hua back to its former glory when it seemed like the universe itself had conspired to make it impossible? Finally, Chung Myung took a deep breath, trying to steady himself amid the chaos. There was no point in being overwhelmed by the scale of the challenge. If anything, the bizarre nature of the current situation proved that this was just another hurdle in his quest to restore Mount Hua. Well, Chung Myung muttered to himself, if the sect's going to be rebuilt, it looks like I'll need to start with sorting out this mess. Resolute, he turned his attention back to the debt collectors. There was no more room for hesitation or self-pity. If Mount Hua was going to rise from the ashes, he needed to address every issue head-on, whether it was rogue sect members, damaged structures, or unpaid debts. The road ahead would be tough, perhaps tougher than he'd ever imagined. But Chung Myung knew one thing for certain. He wasn't going to let the legacy of Mount Hua be defined by its current state of ruin. With a newfound determination, he prepared to tackle the myriad challenges that lay before him, ready to reclaim and rebuild. As he moved forward into the thick of it, he glanced back one last time at the crumbling gate and the chaos it had let in. This was his new reality, and if he was going to face it, he'd do it with the same fire and resolve that had driven him to confront the heavenly demon in the first place. And so, with a deep breath and a steely resolve, Chung Myung stepped into the fray, ready to fight for the future of Mount Hua, no matter how crazy or difficult the journey would be. Episode 20. Mount Hua is like because of me? 5. We've given you time. How much longer are you planning to take? A man can only be so shameless. We have waited long enough. Hunjong's face was as stiff as a board. I know, but at that moment, a man in the back made his move. As he stepped forward, everyone around fell silent and took a step back, as if they were dodging a rolling boulder. Is he the one in charge? Chung Myung's eyes lit up like a kid spotting a candy store. The man had the typical appearance of a merchant, slightly chubby with a face that seemed to radiate expensive silk. Looks like he has a lot of money. Chung Myung decided to give the man his full attention. Sect leader, have you been well? I didn't think that pavilion owner Kong would come here in person. A soft smile crept onto Kong's face. It was the kind of smile that suggested he'd just thought of a new way to charge extra for his goods. I wish I could meet the sect leader under more favorable conditions. I truly didn't want to climb Mount Hua, but there are so many people pushing me to do something. And I apologize. Hyunjong bowed his head slightly. Owner Kong's voice took on a tone of mock sympathy, like a customer service rep who's clearly had enough. But, sect leader, you must also try to understand the feelings of others. The date of our contract has long since passed. Kong leaned back with all the arrogance of a man who knows he's about to drop a hefty fine on someone. We already know Mount Hua's situation and have turned a blind eye a few times. But if you keep breaking your word, it's going to be hard to overlook. Hunjong was silent, his face twitching like someone trying to keep their cool while a child spills soda all over their new carpet. Owner Kong continued with a grin, clearly enjoying his role as the villain of the piece. According to the contract, we could demand payment right now. Owner Kong shook his head with a smirk. We, too, have benefited from Mount Hua's blessings for many years. Thus, we are reluctant to take such harsh measures. Owner Kong, we've already waited. Uh-huh. The merchants around him protested, but Kong silenced them with a theatrical cough. If we don't know grace, we are nothing but animals. Don't be blinded merely by the kindness you've shown them. It is thanks to Mount Hua's graces and blessings that we live so comfortably now. Don't forget the work of your predecessors. Right. Kong's smile widened, like he was about to reveal a magic trick. So, we are going to give you a little more time. We'll give you 7 days. If you don't repay the loan within that time, we'll take Mount Hua as per the initial contract. Oh, Owner Kong, wait for a moment. Sect leader. Kong shook his head, his expression as unyielding as a bouncer at a nightclub. No more. We need the money. We've been as lenient as possible. If the money isn't ready in 7 days, we will confiscate Mount Hua as promised. Kuak! Owner Kong turned his head at the sound of someone stifling a laugh. Wei Chunmyung had his hand over his mouth, trying to hold back a snort. We've shown something unsightly in front of a child, Kong said. This is all for today, sect leader. I hope we can exchange pleasantries and smiles next time we meet. Until then, farewell. As Kong and his entourage made their exit, Hyunjong watched them pass as if he'd just dodged a hungry tiger, letting out a sigh that carried the weight of 1,000 debt collectors. Sigh. The sigh was so deep it could have been used to power a small wind turbine. So, Chungmyung had his legs crossed, resting his chin on his hand, like a philosopher pondering the mysteries of the universe. A merchant from Hua Village? Right. Chungmyung's head bobbed back and forth as he processed the information. Seeing this, the other kid wisely took a few steps back. I don't know if he's about to go on a rampage. It's better to play it safe. The kid had been summoned by Chungmyung after a particularly intense return to the White Plum Blossom boarding house. The kid explained Mount Hua's situation in detail. Hua Village is right under Mount Hua, right? Joe Goul, who had been listening intently, nodded. Yes, Sahyung. I remember seeing it when I was peddling wares with my father. The Mount Hua Sect borrowed money from Hua Village merchants? I don't think that's... The kid scratched his head, clearly not a financial advisor. That man, Kong, is the owner of Taehua Pavilion in Hua Village. It's the largest one there, and he's the most successful merchant in the area. Chungmyung's head snapped up as if he'd just realized he'd left the oven on. Crick, crack! Ha! Joe Goul turned pale as Chungmyung cracked his neck like someone who's had one too many stressful days at work. Sajay! Calm down! Sajay! Taehua, what's wrong? Joe Goul looked at Chungmyung, whose eyes were now wide with a mix of shock and something akin to pure rage. Of course, they couldn't fathom the root of Chungmyung's distress. Step. Chungmyung, suddenly bubbling with energy, leaped from his seat and grabbed the kid by the collar. Is it true that he is the owner of Taehua? Yes. So the owner of Taehua loaned out money to Mount Hua and now he's trying to take the place? Calm down. Calm down? Are you kidding me? Chungmyung released his grip on the kid and scratched his head, trying to wrap his brain around the situation. What's wrong with you, Sajay? Chungmyung couldn't explain it, because there was no way to articulate the shock. Taehua is supposed to belong to Mount Hua. Being a warrior of Mount Hua didn't mean ignoring worldly matters entirely. Any sect, especially one as large as Mount Hua, needed money to survive. But now, a business that was meant to support Mount Hua was trying to collect debts and seize the sect? It didn't make any sense. Sahyung Joe Goul. Huh? Chungmyung whispered something that made Joe Goul's eyes widen in shock. That? Can you get it for me? Joe Goul hesitated but stammered. No, I can but... Then go and bring it to me. Really? Did you think I was joking? Sahyung? I'll bring it. Joe Goul left the room, clearly rattled. What is he planning? Yunjong, observing with concern, tilted his head. Joe Goul's reaction seemed odd. Before he could ponder further, Joe Goul returned carrying something. With a puzzled look, he handed the item to Chungmyung. Cloth? No, clothing. But why would he need that now? Chungmyung took the clothes from Joe Goul and quickly discarded his robes. He was now dressed in black, like a shadowy figure from a spy movie. What are you planning to do? I should ask around. Huh? Chungmyung explained. If I ask the Sassaks, they'd probably brush me off, saying it's not a kid's business. Right. Yunjong said, though he looked increasingly worried. So, I'll go and ask directly. Wait! Yunjong, drenched in cold sweat, realized the gravity of the situation. Chung Myung's antics had been confined to Mount Hua until now, but heading down the mountain could cause unmanageable chaos. He needs to be stopped. Yunjong tried to think of a solution, but nothing seemed viable. You are a disciple, right? Huh? You're a disciple of Mount Hua. Yunjong decided to appeal to Chung Myung's sense of discipline. A disciple shouldn't do such things. We'd be no better than undisciplined groups if you do. Chung Myung nodded seriously, as if he were genuinely reflecting on the advice. You are right. A disciple shouldn't do it. Yunjong's face brightened with hope. Right. But Sahyung, listen up. Huh? There is a Buddhist saying, if you meet a Buddha, kill him, and if you meet an ancestor, kill him. So, being a true disciple requires you to understand this. He draped the cloth over his face, hiding his features, and declared with pride. Sometimes you need to know when to break the law. What was this maniac even talking about? I am going to be a true warrior. Yunjong realized it was pointless to try and stop Chung Myung. He was set on causing chaos, and nothing could change his mind. Yunjong watched in defeat as Chung Myung stormed out, a whirlwind of black clothing and rebellious spirit. What is he even planning? The thought of Chung Myung creating a scene in the outside world filled Yunjong with dread. As he imagined the potential disasters, he could only hope for the best while fearing the worst. Meanwhile, Chung Myung's energy surged as he charged down the mountain like a man on a mission. His black attire fluttered behind him like a cape, making him look like a renegade hero in a low-budget action flick. Gotta get to the bottom of this mess! Chung Myung muttered to himself, his eyes gleaming with determination. He was ready to uncover the truth behind Taehua and Mount Hua's tangled finances. As he approached Hua Village, he drew curious glances from passers-by. He ignored them, his focus solely on finding the answers he sought. The bustling market of Hua Village was a far cry from the serene heights of Mount Hua. It was noisy, crowded, and chaotic, everything a hero in black needed to navigate with ease. Chung Myung moved through the crowd with a sense of purpose, dodging vendors and shoppers like a seasoned pro. Eventually, he arrived at the Grand Taehua Pavilion, the epitome of opulence in Hua Village. It stood tall and proud, a monument to commerce and wealth. He took a deep breath and pushed open the doors, which seemed to groan under the weight of their own grandeur. Inside, the opulent decor was almost overwhelming, with lavish furnishings and an air of excessive wealth that seemed to mock Chung Myung's current predicament. He marched up to the counter, where a well-dressed clerk greeted him with a forced smile. "How may I assist you?" the clerk asked, trying to hide his surprise at the unusual visitor. "I need to speak with the owner," Chung Myung said firmly. The clerk hesitated, eyeing Chung Myung's black attire with a mixture of curiosity and apprehension. "Do you have an appointment?" "No appointment needed," Chung Myung replied, crossing his arms. "It's urgent." After a few moments of awkward silence, the clerk reluctantly nodded and disappeared into the back. Chung Myung waited, his impatience growing with every passing second. Finally, the clerk returned, this time accompanied by a rather displeased-looking Kong. The merchant's eyes narrowed as he took in the sight of Chung Myung. "Who might you be?" Kong asked, his tone dripping with condescension. "I'm Chung Myung," he declared, his voice carrying a mix of defiance and curiosity. "I need some answers about the loan Mount Hua took from you." Kong raised an eyebrow, clearly intrigued but not exactly welcoming. "And why should I entertain your questions?" "Because I'm here to find out why a business that should be helping Mount Hua is now trying to seize it," Chung Myung said, his voice carrying the weight of his frustration. Kong's expression shifted from irritation to amusement. "You're quite bold. I suppose you have your reasons." Chung Myung took a deep breath. "I've got a right to know what's going on, and I'm not leaving until I get some answers." Kong studied him for a moment, then motioned for him to follow. "Very well. Let's discuss this in my office." They walked through the lavish corridors of Taehua Pavilion until they reached Kong's private office. Once inside, Kong gestured for Chung Myung to sit. "So what do you want to know?" Kong asked, settling behind his desk. Chung Myung took a seat, his eyes fixed on Kong. "I want to know why Mount Hua's own business is acting against it. Taihua was supposed to be one of our assets, not a creditor threatening to seize the sect. Kong leaned back in his chair, a thoughtful expression on his face. The situation is more complex than you might realize. Businesses need to be profitable to sustain themselves, and sometimes that means making tough decisions. Chung Myung frowned. But using Mount Hua's own resources against it? That's just wrong. Kong's expression hardened. The world of business isn't kind. If Mount Hua could repay its debts, we wouldn't be having this conversation. Chung Myung's frustration boiled over. You're talking about a sect that's been a blessing to this village for years. How can you justify taking it down now? Kong's gaze softened slightly. I understand your anger, but I also have my obligations. It's not just about the money. It's about fairness and business principles. Chung Myung stood up, his frustration palpable. Fairness? Business principles? You're talking about principles while threatening to dismantle a place that's been integral to this village's success. Kong's eyes narrowed. I have to balance my responsibilities. If Mount Hua can't meet its obligations, then I have to act accordingly. Chung Myung's resolve hardened. Then I'll find a way to make sure that doesn't happen. Mount Hua won't fall on my watch. As he left the office, Chung Myung's mind raced with plans and strategies. The encounter with Kong had only fueled his determination to save Mount Hua from its dire situation. With renewed purpose, he headed back to the sect, ready to confront the challenges ahead and uncover the truth behind the financial entanglements that threatened their future.